Okay, we'll be simulating a scenario in which the crew of a United States merchant marine vessel will be conducting a meeting and drill in anticipation of entering the high-risk area off the coast of Somalia. So the ship's crew will be adhering to the best management practices as best they can, and for protection against Somali pirates. And once the simulation is complete, we'll review some of the key points of their strategy and offer some insight into the details of the scenario. Okay, so I'll be playing the captain of the vessel in the meeting and in the scenario.
And I'll be playing the chief mate.
I'll be playing the chief engineer.
And I'm going to be the first assistant engineer.
That concludes the safety meeting. On to new business. Tomorrow we pick up the armed security personnel, and the next day we enter the high-risk area 1,300 miles off the coast of Somalia. Chief Mate, as the ship's security officer, you're going to be overseeing the ship protection measures in preparation for a possible pirate encounter. Can you brief us on some of the preventative measures that you'll be implementing?
Yes, Captain. In the forward storage hatch, we have enough fencing to barricade the bridge, protecting from any projectiles and limiting access into the bridge. The bosun is currently installing a double-high wall of concrete wire along the starboard O1 deck, and he will begin on the port side after we pick up the armed security team.
Good. Okay. Chief, what about the fire hoses?
So our fire hoses are being set up by the first assistant engineer along the O1 deck of the ship. When we conduct the pirate drill this afternoon, we will test the hoses and ensure that they are, in fact, working properly.
Okay. And how is the engine department with regard to machinery status?
Last we checked, all equipment is fully operational. The oil fuel purifier was put back in service last night. We have all generators available in case we need to power the bow thruster for maneuvering tactics. And the engine crew is prepared.
Okay. And Chief Mate, what about the deck side?
The crew is well rested and ready to take on the high-risk waters. We have enough crew to stand radar watch as well.
All right. It sounds like things are in order. I'll be notifying the marine trade operations in Dubai as soon as we enter the high-risk area.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay.
How's it looking out there, Bob?
Wait. Forward starboard side. Zodiac approaching.
The skip's approaching!
Mate, increase speed to full ahead.
Aye, aye, Captain!
Hard to port.
Aye, aye, Captain! Speed reaching 18 knots!
Chief, this is the captain. Start the fire pumps.
Roger that, Captain. Starting the fire pumps now. The third engineer and I are here. We're at the fire hose. I'll keep you updated. You get the nozzle, I'll support the hose. You get the tip, I got the base, baby. Let's do this. Ready. Ready. Charging. Chief engineer to captain, come in.
This is the captain speaking.
All the lower deck personnel are secure.
Roger that. Instruct the engine department to lock all doors.
Yes, sir. Over now. First engineer, please secure all passageways and doors on the main deck, and ask the chief mate to secure all the doors and passageways above deck. Over.
Right away, Chief. Chief Mate, Captain requests all doors and passages above deck be secured.
In reviewing the scene that we just watched, we can point out some key strategies in the way the crew had an effort in deterring the pirates. First off, they had a meeting before entering the high-risk area. This meeting allowed both the deck and engine department to coordinate and assess the status of the vessel. Communication, informing the crew of the impending risk, and assigning roles and responsibilities are necessary before entering pirate waters.
The crew also had arranged for a PCASP team to come aboard. This may not always be an option, but in this case it was. The presence of an armed guard will often deter pirates. An additional meeting could then be arranged in between the captain and the PCASP team. During the crew's meeting, they discussed standing lookout and radar watches. The ability to identify potential pirate threats before it comes too close is key in preventing an attack.
The captain and the first mate discussed the implementation of ship protection and measures such as barricades and barbed wire, which would make it difficult for pirates to board and protect sensitive areas like the bridge. During the drill, active measures were taken. The speed of the vessel was increased, the fire hoses were charged, and the hatches and the passengers were secured. The crew demonstrated quick response to the threat and very good communication.
So something important to remember, as you saw in our skit, is the preparedness for one of these possible attacks. Not so much having a meeting beforehand when you know you're entering a dangerous area, but having a plan in place beforehand. You want to be able to know what you have to do and what each one of your crew members is going to do, so that when you come to an area where you might be in a potential threat, that you don't have to sit down and explain to every crew member what their job is. You want people to know what they're going to do so you can have a brief meeting and then go on to what your responsibilities are.
Exactly. And some of the crew members I want to speak specifically about today are referred to as the PCASP, which are privately contracted armed security personnel. Now, there has been a huge spike within the Western Indian Ocean in piracy between the years of 2005 and 2009. Now, this is only 8 years ago. Now, because of this, many merchant companies have privately contracted armed security personnel, or PCASP, while sailing in those seas. These are referred to the HRAs. It's the high risk areas. Okay. Now the problem is that keeping firearms on board merchant ships creates huge legal issues within the IMO member states, and the IMO's Military Safety Committee has had a constantly evolving position on this issue over the course of several years. What I'm doing right now is reading directly from the MSC Circ Annex. The carrying and use of firearms for personal protection or protection of a ship is strongly discouraged. This was in 1993. Now jump ahead to 2015. Flag states should strongly discourage the carrying and use of firearms by seafarers for personal protection or the protection of a ship. And the last thing that they were to say is the current position is of tactically acknowledging that the development of armed security personnel on board ships has become an accepted industry and flag state practice in certain circumstances. Now it wasn't until May in 2011 when MSC stated that they neither allow nor rebuke the use of armed security personnel on board ships in hostile waters, and that the decision is left up to the flag state laws. As a whole, everyone accepted that some ships would carry armed guards to prevent pirate attacks, which led to the need for regulation and guidance from the IMO, keeping in mind that much caution is needed to be heeded regarding sovereignty liability, jurisdiction, rights of innocent passage, and ships in transit, among other issues. Although PCASP, having privately contracted security personnel on board ships, has become widely accepted within the shipping industry, we should not rely too heavily on the PSP, but instead consider alternatives such as our best management practices. This is what Bobby was mentioning earlier. It's you can't rely only on the PCASP. You still need to be smart about it. You can't look at it as some sort of scapegoat where, hey, whatever happens, we have our armed security personnel on board. You need to first be prepared, be ready for these attacks, and then have a plan in
a plan in effect to thwart these attacks. Now,
before we talk a little bit more about management and these correct practices, let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of our armed guards. First of all, ships using the PCASP armed guards have never, 100% success rate, have never had a hijacked ship. But the problem is it's logistically complex. There's going to be a lot of things in motions. You have to be able to organize with the crew to be able to either come aboard or have their boats come alongside to be able to guide you into port. And it's going to be more expensive for your shipping company, whether they're going to want to finance this, if they think that the risk is worth the extra cost or not. They're going to have to go into their cost analysis for that. Now, another possible con is if you have armed guards on your ship and you have armed pirates coming up to your boat, it's going to escalate violence. Instead of trying to have some sort of peaceful negotiation, you have arms against arms, and it puts you in a potentially dangerous situation. That being said, it does supply the ship with some sort of peace of mind. You're going to be going into a port knowing you have armed guard, knowing you have some protection. It's not just going to be you against these pirates or other possible threats when you're coming into port. And it's important for the people on your ship working to have peace of mind and be able to feel comfortable doing their own jobs.
exactly. The big point here is that having armed security personnel on your ship, it's sort of like a net to catch you if all else fails. It's a great way to protect your ship, the people on board, whatever cargo you're carrying, the lives of your crewmates, if your plan of attack or plan of defense fails. They're great as something to fall back upon, but they are not something to rely upon as your number one form of defense. Now, do you want to talk a little bit about the use of unarmed guards aboard ships?
Yeah. So unarmed guards is another tactic that's used sometimes, and it addresses a lot of what Jake's talking about, where you want to be able to have that, your crew feeling confident going into port, and unarmed guards can provide that confidence because you have men who are there trained for these situations, know what to do when pirates come, when someone comes on your ship, if they're trying to take it over, if they're trying to steal from you, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
But it can boost crew morale, and it can make the pirates more cautious, knowing that you have these extra crew members on board. It's not just going to be the slim pickings of your basic ship crew. They're more trained in verbal techniques and being able to try to come to some sort of peaceful resolution to any situation you could be in. But that being said, this kind of goes into our management practices that you and your crew should be ready for. Things that you should already have in place. Your company should be responsible for training and having some sort of plan ready to go in case you're in this sort of situation.
And even years later now, the MSC is still developing, adopting, and updating their guidance regarding the use of PCASP in reference to ships within these high-risk areas that I was talking about. The guidance not only for the ship operators, but also for the ship owners and ship masters. This incorporated guidance touches on a variety of issues, such as the use of force, to complement the existing guidance, to provide further assistance in policy development at a national level, and facilitate greater harmonization of policies at the international level for PCASP. Now, to summarize, the use of both armed and unarmed security personnel should be considered as an alternative, or not an alternative, but as a safety net, in case your BMP, your best management practices, were to fail in any situation where, having the fire hoses ready, as we saw in our little skit earlier, having the fire hoses ready, putting up taller barricades. If anything else were to happen, you need to be able to rely on people who have weapons or don't have weapons but are trained to deal with these dangerous scenarios.
To talk about the Somali piracy in 2017 is to look back at the peak of piracy around 2010. This is not to say that the problem of Somali piracy has been solved. Just last month, an oil tanker, Eris 13, and its crew were hijacked. But there has been a sharp decline in recent years. The Eris 13 hijacking was the first major act of piracy against a commercial vessel since 2012. and it was a comparatively benign incident, as the crew was released unharmed and no ransom was paid. The vessel was not adhering to best management practices, as it was moving at low speeds, making it an easy target. So what lessons have been learned, and what factors have contributed to the decline of piracy in Eastern Africa? Best management practices detail a host of effective tactics that can be used by a vessel before, during, and after its transit through a high-risk area. Each of these tactics represents a lesson learned the hard way. These practices have effectively deterred pirates off the coast of Somalia, reducing the number of successful attacks. Clearly, best management practices are essential to defending a vessel against pirate attacks. But vigilance and preparedness have not single-handedly thwarted pirates. There has been a concerted effort in the international community to stop piracy. Effective action measures include NATO's counter-piracy operation. Operation Ocean Shield began in August 2009. Its mission was to combat at-sea piracy. The mere presence of a naval force dedicated to deterring piracy had a significant impact on just that. Other tactics employed by NATO included air surveillance, disabling pirate skiffs, tracking pirate motherships, assisting regional states in combating pirates domestically, and providing escort to UN supply vessels so as to ensure delivery of humanitarian aid to Somalia. Operation Ocean Shield was effective in deterring Somali piracy. The tapering of the piracy threat led NATO to suspend the operation, in December 2016. Greater regional stability has also contributed to the decline in piracy during the past several years. This country is by no means a whole integrated state, but it has made progress out of chaos. Countrywide stability has been attributed to a new president, President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, elected 2012. Another factor in the stabilization of Somalia is the successes in the war against the terrorist group Al-Shabaab, whose activity is linked with piracy in a complex symbiotic relationship. To put it succinctly, Al-Shabaab creates the chaos in which piracy flourishes. The war on piracy ashore is argued to be the most sustainable solution to piracy, the only solution that addresses the root cause. All other preventative measures, including naval intervention and best management practices, are stopgaps. The contracting of armed guards, avoidance routing, and increased speed have all been costly to the shipping industry and do not solve the root issue, but merely prevent incidents. But these practices, though costly, need to be continued so as to prevent opportunities for pirate attacks, such as the recent Ares 13 hijacking. As John Huggins, director of Oceans Beyond Piracy, said, "The progress made combating pirates is fragile and reversible. Pirate gangs are awaiting an opportunity to make a comeback, and it is necessary for the shipping industry to fight to secure its advantage."